Hi everyone, welcome back to the Creator Shelf. My name is Nidia B and good to have you here. So this week's video is quite targeted towards something which I thought would be helpful in terms of self-development. So I have already mentioned things like different pieces of literature that I found very helpful on my shelf in terms of self-development, using journals, using notebooks, using tarot cards and so forth. And I was speaking to a friend and she mentioned this week that she was inspired to look at tarot cards or just intrigued by them, I should say, because they piqued her interest because how they can be used for self-development. And for some reason my mind went to decks that I have in my collection, which are not tarot decks. Basically they're just images, but I have found them really helpful. So the first deck that I'm going to show you, and I don't think I want to call them oracle decks so much as well. I think some of them are oracle decks actually, but some of them are just decks of images and they don't really fall into a specific classification. So this is Soul Cards and it's by Deborah Koff Chapin, and I know that she's already working on another deck right now. There's Soul Cards 1 and Soul Cards 2. The publisher is the Center for Touch Drawing, which I understand is her own company. I know US Games also has its own version out. And these are cards that I personally got upon recommendation from Lisa from Supportive Tarot. So I'm going to link Lisa Pappas' channel below and where she talks about soul cards, because it was her review of them that actually, or I think it was part of her decks of the decade video that she'd done last year. Well, when she mentioned it, and I again, piqued my interest, these cards, and in the end I ordered them and I absolutely love them. So these are cards where there is just an image, and I wanted to go into a little bit about how can this be helpful in terms of self-development and why it might be helpful to just invest in one pack and see how it works for you. So if you look at these cards here, they're just extraordinary images. And one of the things that I did with a friend recently was just sit down with her and encourage her to use her own deck of kind of like images and so forth, to draw upon that when dealing with an issue, because she was upset about something. But it doesn't normally have to be when we're in a disturbed state. We can also be in fantasy or creativity, or just needing some kind of soothing energy. I also find these kind of decks are very, very helpful at the end of a day, at the end of a working day, because I work in a very kind of like an environment where the nature of the topics and the things that I work on, it's quite clear, it's very well defined in some ways. And whilst there is a creative element always, I believe there's creativity in all different kinds of areas, including corporate life. I just believe that sometimes I need something where I look at images which are outside of boundaries, some kind of boundary. And I think that this pack in particular, this set of cards, soul cards, has been very good with helping me kind of like just take my mind somewhere else at the end of a long day. So one of the things that I encourage is you can take a card such as this one. Now, when I look at it, for some reason, it feels a little bit like an angel or some kind of a spirit guide comforting someone, or it could be this person's aura and her own self getting comforted. But one of the things that I've done is that I've sat with a card like this and some paper and literally using the colors from the card created my own image. And I think that that's something that one can do in terms of healing. You can also see here there's like a star around the forehead. Actually, it looks like there's a halo forming around her forehead. So maybe it's a crown, or there's actually stars throughout the body of that image. But again, you can use those kind of like shapes, those kind of patterns to create your own drawing and to help look at what that reminds us of. Is it something from the past? Is it a story that I read when I was a child? And allow myself to explore that in a different dimension. So that's why I thought I would, look at these cards with you this week, because one of the things that I do, I mean, tarot is a wonderful system, and you can see, one of my favorite decks here is, again, actually I've got a lot of favorite decks, but it's Tarot of the She, and it's a beautiful deck which I'll be looking at a little bit later with you. But one of the things that can happen is that when I have a system such as tarot, or a very specific, even an oracle deck system, I can get very caught up on the words and hung up on the words. Now, keywords are very helpful because they can actually help provide guidance in a reading. So oracle decks for me do play a very valuable role. So do, of course, tarot decks. But sometimes I want something where there is no word. I can put my own word to it. I can make it an energy which is fun and exciting. I can make it an energy which is scary. I can associate it with an angel. I can associate it with a monster. I can take the negative and the positive out of it and just look at it as colors of the earth and air. The point is that when I sometimes have images which have absolutely no words to them, they allow me to break out of my comfort zone. And the same card one week can hold a whole set of values or principles or thoughts or beliefs or memories coming up, and then the following week the same card can have a completely different resonation. And so that's why, in terms of using tarot or oracle decks or whatever you want to call them for self-development, one of the ones that I always recommend is ones that don't have really particular words. And the backing of these, that's the booklet. The backing of these is very plain. So as you can see, it's great. The reader, the viewer, the interpreter really gets free fall. And I know somebody mentioned it in one of the groups that I'm part of, that she said, she was trying to explain it to another person who's collecting decks, that sometimes we can think of it as just like when psychologists use ink blots. But for me, the imagery, some of it is just so powerful. It's much further. I mean, for here, it that can be arms, it can be feathers. It's just very sharp shape, but still drawing in, and just, is that a cave? Obviously it's a human body around it, but it also looks a bit like a cave. And so for me, there's so much that we can get out of these images that I don't want to actually put them in a label. So that's one set of cards. The other set of cards that I have here, so I'll just come out the shot, is ones by Susan Seddon Boulay. So she did animal spirits and goddesses. She's done these two packs. They're very affordable. The publisher is, I'll just check here, Pomegranate, and that's the name of the publishing company. And they are quite, the mass market decks, they're quite reasonable in terms of pricing. And again, now these are a little bit more specific in terms of their images. So I need to be, and there is text at the back, so bear with me. But again, if you have a look at these, one of the things that I realized when during quarantine was that I was drawn again to some tarot and oracle cards I'd had from 5-6 years ago. But one of the things I realized at that moment was that for years I've been collecting postcards. And then it was during quarantine I realized it was because I wanted to collect images. So for me, cards like this are just absolutely fabulous, because whilst they might be associated with a specific goddess for the author, for example, this is Valkyrie, and she's the bird goddess, and and here at the back we have some text about the image. But what I personally love, and sorry, I should mention that the goddess, sorry, no, that's not Valkyrie, sorry, they're stuck together. That is a goddess that I can't even pronounce the name of. What is it? Lazole Tiol. There's the name. So I'm not going to even try and pronounce that. Whilst the image is from Susan Eleanor Boulay, the text is Michael Babcock, and I should mention that. But what I find really, really fantastic is you might get a bit of text there, which is helpful if you want to use it as a card in that sense. But again, when I look at this, I see the bird. Um, I see her naked figure. So I see kind of like a form of purity or nakedness, or just bearing everything. I see a beautiful kind of like set of hair coming out from the back, or some kind of energy or aura coming out from her head at the back here. And so you can see here that this, for me, this card just represents so much that it would be, we can just use this well beyond what I would say is an oracle card as such. And so, yeah, this is another set of cards that are available. They're very reasonably priced. And for somebody who's beginning in this journey, I thought I would just, give this kind of like recommendation, because it is just really good to be able to mix and see different things in different ways. So, yeah, so that was another set of cards that I wanted to show. So, yeah, it's going to be a short video today, but I hope that this quick tip for anybody who's exploring using tarot oracle decks for self-development, this might be helpful. And what I always say is that like everything, it's just so easy when we see such a huge mix and variety to think, well, what am I going to get? And then it can be that we end up buying stuff and we're not using it, and of course that becomes such a waste. So I would always recommend start with just 1 or 2 packs. You don't need much to just feel the energy. It is good to sometimes have a selection. I will say that in this area, because while some decks will resonate with some people, of course others won't. There are some for whom the Crow Tarot, which I mention so often, this is not really a deck for them. They're not really into collage images. Or for some, the other one that I mentioned here is Tarot of the She, and again, that's a deck that's not really for everyone. And you can see here from just the cover image that that's a very strong image, and for some that would just be too much to then start working with. And this has a very strong energy, this deck. So what I'm very, very careful of is that whilst it's good to just have a few, of course, to start off with, if they don't resonate with you, not to necessarily give up, because of the fact that this world has such a huge variety of different styles, different authors, different artists, publishing companies, even the feel of the cards. There's a debate. Some people love, for example, the thinner cards that Llewellyn produces. Some people prefer US GameStop. So so just not to get too worried if that doesn't resonate for you. There's obviously going to be something out there. So yeah, I hope you found that useful, and thank you all for watching and tuning in, and I will see you next week.